I know everyone hates thinking about it, but our reaction times slow down as we get on in years. The funny thing is that it always seems to happen before you are aware of it. Time is just sneaky like that, creeping up on you when you are sleeping. Well, just because we can't do the things we used to do does not mean we have to give it all up. We just have to be aware of that darn moving line and be a little cautious. Here we go.
Rambles of a madman.
I'd say, everyone kind of brings their own style to these adventure rides. They bring their own dynamic when we're doing a group ride. You have all these lines joining together, right? And so it's like, okay, do we ride for this rider over here whose line is way back there? Do we all just kind of ride our own line and just kind of check on each other from time to time? I think that dynamic is also interesting when we're camping, when we're biking together. You're bringing a whole other variable into the mix just by having other riders with you.
A beginner or somebody with, a lifetime of experience, we all have to recognize the line exists for everybody. It's not the same. So just because they can do it, you may not be able to do it, and vice versa. If you're going camping, take somebody with you, show them what it's about.
Pedal up that hill. It'll be worth the thrill. If you got the power of will to bike and camp and chill. To bike and camp and chill.
So how's it looking over there? How much snow you still got?
We got about an inch overnight last night, and it's kind of melted off a bit, but I still have, anywhere there's shade, I still have standing snow of about 2 inches.
How much did you get total when the storm came through?
I'm gonna say at its deepest point was probably about 10 inches, maybe 12, but yeah, so it's the biggest snowstorm we've had since we've been here, so.
That's crazy. So you were just huddled inside most of the time then?
I pretty much avoided it as much as I could. Yeah, I was going to run down the mountain this morning, but Sandy, when she went down, there was a hay truck and a couple logging trucks that were bringing up equipment that were spinning out and stuck on the road. So I thought, I'll just let them stay there. I'll just stay home.
Yeah.
So
yeah, once you're nice and cozy and everything. Yeah, I think there was spots when I was looking on my fence line where it looked like around 8 inches. I'm kind of near that hill over here in Coos Bay. So when I went up there, it definitely looked like they got a bit more than what I saw like down by the bay. But it's almost all gone at this point. Sun came out today and got rid of a lot of it.
A couple of days ago, I thought it was going to get about a good 2 inches of rain or something like that, or a good heavy inch of rain. An inch of 38, 40 degree rain would have wiped it out. But what we got was more snow.
Were you on the trainer then? Is that how you've been getting some exercise in?
Yep, every other day or so, I'm on there for a couple hours, and I don't know, 2 hours. That's about all I can stand. It's that trainer sometimes seems harder than the Gio de Langlois.
Yeah, you crank it up all the way. Do you put on some music, or what do you usually do during that time?
Well, I alternate. Sometimes I just sit straight up and read, and sometimes I listen to music, or sometimes both. That was, I was listening to a Spanish lesson course. Hey, you gotta shove stuff in.
Yeah. So what'd you learn? What'd you learn how to say in Spanish? I'm done riding my bike now.
Yeah. My bike's killing me. Yeah. Oh, I was so I found this course online. I'm like, yeah, okay. And some of his techniques, I thought I can agree with that. That makes sense to me. And that's in his thought process is, hey, if you learn the top 100 words, you're probably about 50% fluent. You know, now there's going to be a whole lot you don't understand. Right? Most of that will be verbs, but so he's focusing on grammar and then that top 100 to 1,000 words basically.
Yeah. I remember taking Spanish. I took 2 Spanish classes in high school. I don't really remember much, but what I do remember is the first year we had this one Spanish teacher where she's teaching everything by the book. And so you're pretty much like getting in the rhythm of just memorizing stuff, doing everything by the book. And then she had a whole teaching personality, way that, teaching style. Then the next year, we had a totally different teacher who actually like grew up down near the border, knew Spanish super well. And he would pretty much like throw the book on the floor and be like, no one talks like this.
Yes. Yep.
Like he'd be like, if I taught you everything by the book, once you're actually out on the street talking to somebody, that's not how they talk. And so he did teach us more of the nuances. But I think the issue I always had is like, yeah, you could learn Spanish really well, but the minute somebody that speaks it fluently is talking to you, they say it so fast that, and they'll blend words together. So it's like, hey, if you wrote this down and I had time to like actually process it, maybe I'd know what you're saying. Now they have stuff like Google Translate, or I think it'll just translate in real time to you, like when somebody's talking or something. Yeah, at least it gives you something to do when you're training in the.
Let's face it, when we're on the bike, there's a lot of time.
Oh yeah,
you're sitting there spinning, right? And if you're listening to music, that makes it go by. And same thing. Okay, it's like driving with an audiobook in the car, right? It makes the time go by listening to something.
Yep.
How much do you really pick up? I don't know.
Yeah. No, there's times when I'll listen to music and I'm in that groove. And then there's other times where it's like, if I'm riding all day or something and I'm by myself, audiobooks. I used to listen to a lot of audiobooks. I find myself listening to more podcasts now because you can kind of pick up on, I don't know, when people are having a conversation on a topic, you don't necessarily, I think there's a difference between going in depth and listening to an entire book versus hearing a discussion with the author of that book. But just hearing some people talk like we're doing right now, some people have times in their day when just hanging out and getting to talk to somebody, and that's just going to be a little bit different than just reading a book or listening to an in-depth book or learning a language or whatever it is. So, well, welcome to the party. Glad to have you. Michael's not here this time. It's just you and me crushing beers.
Knocking out a beer.
You got the Black Butte.
If I didn't find the chutes, I probably could have owned a second home.
Right.
It's just, it just makes this home happy, huh?
I guess we know who we need to figure out a sponsorship with then, huh?
Yeah.
I've got the competitor. They're in Bend too, 10 Barrel.
Oh, yeah. They put out a decent beer too.
I wasn't even looking for a stout. I was going to get some Pelican cream ale or something. And then I saw this limited release seasonal winter stout. Pray for Pow, which I think is like pray for powder. It's got like a skier on the back. But POW also stands for Protect Our Winters. So I think it's some like percentage goes to that. But yeah, not bad. We always got to do the beer segment before we start things off.
That's part of the chill, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And this episode could have been brought by one of them, but it wasn't. So free advertising, I guess. Cool. Well, let's jump into this. What do you want to call this thing? So to give listeners some context here, there was a while back where I think you might have just been up late at night. Maybe you had certain versions of this that you revised over time. But would you call this a journal entry, something like that?
Random thoughts of a madman.
Yeah.
But
I like it.
It's all those weird things that go through your head, and it's stuff I think every seasoned cyclist knows, but we don't talk about it. We really don't.
Yeah, I mean, maybe in conversation. I think I read through it, and when you sent it to me the first time, I think it is something that everyone kind of knows. We'll talk about from time to time, but why not discuss it a little bit more in depth? I thought it'd be a perfect topic to cover on a podcast. Kind of read this through, and just kind of put some more words to this feeling people have, these thoughts that come up when we talk about riding, challenging yourself at any level. A lot of times we are talking about doing something more chill, but even what we find chill could be more challenging for somebody else that isn't used to it. So I think that's the perfect way to connect to what we're calling. You titled this "The Line," and so we'll get in depth on what that is. I'm probably going to read this over. I like that when you sent this most recent email to me, you said, "Hey, this is damn wordy for reading in a podcast, but it might just be an ugly old dude's rant. I do think we can talk about times we were over the line. God knows I'm near death more times than I should be." So I think it'd be perfect to read this.
Okay.
And so I'll read it. I'll kind of give some enthusiasm to some of it and just read it through. I think maybe even you hearing it from someone else, maybe some ideas will come to mind, but I think I'll read it. And I think most people will find it pretty entertaining. And then we can add our commentary afterward. So also for listeners that don't know, Ugly Al now has an Instagram. Hopefully you'll start adding stuff on there. Ugly Al, the bikepacker. Look him up. And when this podcast comes out, we'll tag you in it so people can start being aware. But, as Al likes to say, just some old ugly guy, right? But some of us have a difference in opinion on how ugly. But these are all thoughts that probably riders all over the world have, and people that go on adventures. It doesn't even have to be cycling related. It doesn't even have to be being active, like we just said. It doesn't have to be physical. It could be a mental challenge. It could be a lot of things, but we're calling this The Line. So let's read this. The Line by Alan House. The line exists for everyone. What is the line? Well, it can represent many things, but my definition is that place where your riding ability and the riding conditions cross. Once you pass over the line, you are riding beyond your ability for the given riding conditions. Yes, we have all ridden over that line, and some of us have paid the price. If you are unsure of what riding over that line looks like, just search for mountain bike fails or learning to ride a bike on YouTube. You can see riders of all abilities that have crossed over the line. Most of the time, the results are spectacularly painful to watch. It's proof that just because you crash and burn does not mean you are unskilled. Many of the videos are of people with a high degree of skill. In every case, the video shows someone whose abilities failed to measure up to the situation at hand. So what do we do about this damn line? First, it's important to note that the line is not in a fixed location. It constantly changes location depending on hundreds of variables, most of which you can't control. For us, the key is to recognize and work on those things we can control. Just because your abilities make some trails or road conditions sketchy, maybe even downright dangerous, does not mean that you can never ride in those locations. You need to recognize why the situation is beyond your capabilities and work on increasing your skill level to handle those conditions. Yep, simply practicing certain skills will change where the line is and safely open up new riding opportunities. Yeah, I know, practice, oh God, that sounds so boring. Don't call it practice if that's what it takes. Call it training and have fun with it. Practice, training, might just be riding the trail a little slower until you master the feel and flow of the trail. As your skill level increases, the line moves a little bit, and you can safely ride faster. This is one of the reasons why riding the same trail many times remains so enjoyable. It is different at different speeds, conditions, and abilities. If you are set on expanding your skill level, make a game of it. Have some fun. Now, a quick word of caution about the line. The line not only moves based on your abilities, but also on changes in the world you are riding in. Bombing that killer hill is fun, but if the road is wet, the line is not where it was on the last dry run. That one seems obvious to most riders, but still we get caught off guard now and then. Other than weather, what other factors change the line's location? Well, almost everything moves the line, but most of the time we are riding well within our limits, so we don't notice. The line is safely somewhere over there, and everything works out fine. If you are bound and determined to ride on the edge, with your toe just on or over the line, be aware that that line could have moved. Enjoy the challenge of towing that line and try to keep the knobby side down. Here is one for you adventurers. Simply add 35 pounds of gear to your bike and see how it responds. Your signature bunny hop might end up being a pathetic bunny hope as you fail to clear that downed log or curb. Maybe over or under inflate your tires and hit that berm or jump. Maybe you wash out on the same line you rode minutes before, or peel a tire off the rim and eat that tree lurking just off the trail. You know that tree, the one that sort of reaches out and grabs people now and again. Have you heard of all too famous one last run jinx? Hit that technical section of trail once you are exhausted, and the line might not even be in the same county. What about those temporary skill adjustments? In the prophetic words of a popular song, you might be one took over the line, or maybe it's one drink over the line. It might even be those tiny words on that new prescription medication warning us do not drive or operate heavy equipment while using this medication. Finally, let's talk about getting older. I know everyone hates thinking about it, but our reaction times slow down as we get on in years. The funny thing is that it always seems to happen before you are aware of it. Time is just sneaky like that, creeping up on you when you are sleeping, maybe. Well, just because we can't do the things we used to do does not mean we have to give it all up. We just have to be aware of that darn moving line and be a little cautious. Here we go.
Rambles of a madman.
I'd say, I think a lot of that, whether it's a rant, whether it's random, it's good to be reminded when you're testing yourself why you should test yourself in the first place. But then, you should be cautious. You do not want to be injured to the degree of not being able to ride at all, especially long term. I mean, everyone should take time to recover, take care of themselves. Everyone kind of has a different routine and a different way they actually enjoy these activities. There are people that will just straight up go hard, and that's the fun of it. And then there's people that are going to be a little bit more wise about it. But the part about getting older, I think that's what I'm enjoying about riding with, whether it's you, Gary, having all these older guys that are still riding and seeing them doing that has been inspirational for me. And yeah, we're all getting older, but I appreciate getting to see that you're still not letting that stop you.
We approach it differently. We might need an extra day to recover from a big ride like that. It could be all kinds of things, or maybe like Gary's so smart about it. He has his pace. He climbs. He says he stops and smells the flowers, right? And he descends and he climbs at a slower pace. He's still doing it all. He just is slowed down a little bit. What really kind of struck me on the line business, I guess what started the rambling is getting back into cycling is, I tend to pick somebody and try to match what they're doing because, if if they're taking this corner at that speed, well, similar bike, I should be able to do the same thing. Well, that's discounting all that person's ability, and that's not smart. And it has reached out and just about taken me right off the bike a few times, bombing down a hill. And it's like, well, I'm going to follow this line because I can see that track. I'm right behind them, bombing down a hill. And the person in front of me skill set says, yeah, there's a big old, rut in the road. I'll just bunny hop that. And you can't bunny hop that, then you've made a mistake and you don't have any time to recover. So you have to be aware that maybe that person who has less skill than you is the one you ought to be following.
I think I remember you fell off a ladder or had an injury like that,
Yeah.
right? But have you ever been pretty seriously injured from doing any of this kind of stuff?
No, I've not been seriously injured, but I have done I've lost a lot of skin. And my legs will probably be scarred forever. Simply because on and off the bike activities, catching a pedal, riding flats is great, but there's a lot of pointy things on them that if you get off the bike just right or wrong, that next thing you know, you have like the cat scratches down your calf or something. And I've hit roots and end up laying down next to the trail trying to figure out what happened. I've not been seriously injured. I guess I bounce really well. It could, it's a matter of time, I think, unless I recognize that I ought to take it seriously.
Yeah, yeah. And if we haven't, I haven't had any major injuries, and some of that could be luck, but some of it could be that, hey, I am riding more cautious. And maybe your idea of cautious may not be as cautious as somebody else. There's difference in perspective and an opinion on that. But if you've been riding long enough, you've heard stories of other people being seriously injured. We hear stuff like that all the time. So it can happen. If you enjoy riding your bike, last thing you would want is to not be able to ride it anymore, right? So I think we do kind of take that pretty seriously. Like if you come across a pretty sketchy area, yeah, you could bomb down it for the fun of it. But if it's icy and you could slide out, or, on the unpredictable nature of cars and all that, and I think that's why some people do prefer mountain biking, because you actually don't have to deal with traffic and cars as much when you're on trails. But now there's totally other variables. So,
Right.
there's danger with all of it. And you do need to be cautious if you're planning on, living a long, healthy life and having bikes as your, activity.
Most of us, I think almost all of us, we wear a helmet because protect your head. Everything else will heal over time. Cyclists are famous for breaking collarbones, wrist and collarbones, which is not a comfortable thing to ride with, that's for sure. But it's usually not debilitating. The last time we were bombing down the Sixes Elk Loop, my back tire came around. And I thought it was going to pass me up. I caught some gravel in a bad way, and it was looking really ugly there for what felt like minutes, but was probably about 2 seconds. Riding trails. I've ridden trails, the Whiskey Run trails behind Mike, and I have that little girl nervous laugh all the time I'm on it because like the trail will turn left and maybe I don't. I miss a line, I miss the flow, and I'm locking my brakes up off the trail trying to get back on the trail because I don't have that skill set. We went bike camping with Jerry Gross, and his skill sets when it comes to riding trails is just phenomenal. It's a big mistake to follow behind him thinking I'm nearly as strong as he is, so I will try to just ride where he goes. What I learned about that ride behind Jerry is there's a thing called a pedal strike. You reach down and put your pedal down, and it hits a rock or a log, and your bike's not where it's supposed to be anymore. You end up laying down. So he's smart enough to recognize that's a real thing and ride around it. I didn't have that skill set.
Yeah. Well, one thing you bring up in this journal entry, drunken words of a late night madman. Unless it was early morning with a cup of coffee, maybe it was that style.
Maybe I was over caffeinated. Yeah.
But what came to my mind too is when you're practicing the same route, or it's a local, your everyday ride, you can really get in a groove. You know what to expect. You can train on that. You can test your time. You can make adjustments to your bike, have different gear, do that same route, see if it makes a difference when it comes to speed and everything. And it's not always speed or racing or time that is what matters. Maybe it's, how much weight you're carrying. I mean, that's gonna totally slow you down, but you're getting more of a workout in that case. But when the adventure happens is usually when you're in new territory. And that's when you don't know what to expect. And that's when this line can really be unknown, right?
Right.
So, you have your local trail and the line that lives there in your own backyard that you're pretty familiar with. But like you say in this, there's so many variables and that line becomes unknown. And would you say that that's kind of the fun of the adventure, kind of where the fun starts is sometimes you're talking about towing the line, but I think it's sometimes you don't really know where that line is when it's new territory. And so some of that can be exciting, but in the back of your mind, you're like, I better watch my shit and not be careless in these moments, right?
I think for the most part, when we strap on a lot of weight, put on the bike, we tend to be cautious, just because we know our bike is not going to respond nearly as quickly or in the way where we're used to it to responding. We're climbing slower. We might be descending faster with all that extra weight, but we know that's a problem. So on big, long bombing hills, we'll stop. We'll brake for brakes. We'll stop and just let your hands kind of come back to life, and your brakes cool down a little bit. But there's been several times where we'll be bombing down a hill that we've never been down before, and maybe it alternates between pavement and gravel, and usually on a descent, that's kind of a sketchy area. I treat that as, those transitions as something you really have to be aware of, because you either have now gravel on the pavement, which is might as well be ice, or water runs off the pavement and creates a nice ditch right at the start of the gravel. So you're always you have problems either way. And if you're doing it at 30 miles an hour with a bike that's got 40 extra pounds, you may be in trouble. So take your time. And we've had a good winter. A road that was really good last year might be all rivulets in valleys now, or loose rock versus packed rock. So it changes on us.
So another question I have for you, and for listeners that maybe haven't listened to all the episodes leading up to here, we've gotten some of your background story. You did a lot of road touring in the recent last couple of years. You've gotten more into adventure cycling, and by that we kind of mean all-terrain bike packing. And as you say in this journal entry, you're getting older. We know you do have plans to do Ragbri, which is the ride across Iowa 50th anniversary this year. You've done things like that in the past. You're wanting to have fun. You're wanting to challenge yourself still. You're still pretty capable. You're testing. You're towing that line. Do you have any objectives on the horizon as far as like what you hope to do in the coming year or next year? Like, are you trying to continue to improve and progress, or are you just wanting to just simply have fun on bikes, or is there something more to it than that?
Well, I think I want to just ride bikes till my time is done. How's that? And who knows when that's going to be? But like anything I've approached, I want to be competent enough that I'm comfortable with it. Coming from a road riding background, most part you can ignore what you're riding on. It's pretty consistent. It just you pay attention till you don't catch a storm grate or rumbles or something like that, or just road trash, whatever's laying out there. But for the most part, the tarmac is a good rolling surface, and you just go. A 20-mile ride in the gravel, you're 20 miles of paying attention, whether it's soft, a good line, you're riding packed, or maybe there's sand, or you're riding off the road entirely to get some traction in some grass. So that does a lot for me, because it's always changing. It's very active riding. I found that on the road, there are times if you have a good place to ride, not a lot of traffic, not a lot of distractions that way, you could lose time out there because you're not really actively, riding the bike in your head. You're physically moving it, but you're mentally, off somewhere else. In adventure riding, you kind of have to be aware of the conditions because they're changing so often, right? So I guess the long term is I'm not trying to improve to a specific measurable point like that. I know the more capable I am on the bike, the more comfortable I'll be on the bike. I'll be more comfortable trying different things, whether it's, heck, I thought I would take a shortcut the other day and on a route, and I'm riding through mud puddles that were as deep as my bottom bracket. And, that's a whole new world from a road cyclist point of view. And all the time I'm pedaling through it, I'm hoping that, the bottom stays firm enough that at least the bike stays upright. So I'm learning something, right? So something about roots, a wet root on a trail, it just reaches out and grabs my front tire and throws me on the ground. There's a trick. I have to learn that trick. When we rode out by Blacklock, there's some hiking paths where people have walked the same area so frequently and so often that you have like a 10-inch or 12-inch path that might be 9 inches deep. That's not a comfortable place to ride because your pedals strike on one side or the other. So either you get enough speed, kind of coast through there, or you don't ride through there at all. Again, even a mountain bike, how it's built, your tire size, the frame geometry of actually how much clearance you have on a pedal from the tarmac or the gravel. So all that is a learning process, and that line changes if you just ride the same course on a different bike.
Yeah. And, this podcast is about bikes, but not just about bikes. When we say bike camp and chill, I even just released a canoe, kayak, and chill video. So,
Nice.
There's other forms of fun. Where would you say that there's parallels with this just in other forms of life?
My first thing is when you're looking at it, usually it's athletically, you're looking at something, and so a runner has the same thing, what's their distance, what's their pace, and that line changes. If it's 40 degrees versus 80 degrees, all of a sudden, your 6-minute mile might not be feasible, right? So that line changes. If training at altitude changes that. Everything we do, I mean, so many things outside your control change that line. The more you want to push or toe that line, the more often you're going to go over that and have problems. Like I said in the rant, often we are riding so well within ourselves, we don't realize the line's moving. Our abilities are high enough or we're well below where that crossing point is, that we don't have a problem. It's just a measure of us being on the planet.
Yeah. And I think we would probably, depending on your personality and, just the type of person you are, you're probably going to do other things in your life with the same kind of wisdom and caution. Somebody that wants to have that adrenaline rush and be more dangerous, they're probably going to, do that in other ways of their life as well, versus somebody that wants to be more cautious. They're probably going to have caution. Everyone kind of brings their own style to these adventure rides. They bring their own dynamic when we're doing a group ride. And, I guess that's something to bring up too, right? Is when we're doing a group ride, you have all these lines joining together, right? And so it's like, okay, do we ride for this rider over here whose line is way back there? Do we all just kind of ride our own line and just kind of check on each other from time to time? I think that dynamic is also interesting when we're camping, when we're biking together. You're bringing a whole other variable into the mix just by having other riders with you.
Last time we rode the Elk Sixes loop, that was really well said by Jerry Gross. Talked about how he rides hills, right? How he climbs. He almost has no choice. But the way his bike's geared and his cadence and his fitness level means he needs to go, this fast. You either go that fast or he drops you. I actually, when I started running, I was off for a while, started running again. I ran with somebody who was vastly better than I was. He just kind of got me back into running again. And we ran 3 miles. And the next day I was a little sore. And this person who could really outrun me was just beat up. He was like, oh, I'm like, how could that 3 miles hurt you like that? He says, because I was running so slow, I was hopping up and down versus running forward. By backing it off so much for him just to run with me, it was hurting him. And I think that's how Jerry would be trying to, if he backed it off, he'd have to change his cadence to the point that he uses his legs differently and he wouldn't be able to climb as effectively, right?
Yeah.
So we do that all the time. We're maybe on the hill, it's like everybody climbs their own hill and you just get up to the top. I'll see you at the top. At the bottom, we do the same thing because people descend better than I do. And I'll see you at the bottom because I'll catch up to you eventually, but for the most part, if it's flat or if it's comfortable riding, we tend to ride as a group, and because socially it's a lot easier. It's easier to ride 10 miles with somebody than 5 miles without.
Well, if you're always in go mode or race mode, I think sometimes playing the game of how slow can I go can actually be its own workout or even a meditation because you're kind of forced to go against that habit. Sometimes you might be riding with slower riders, like you gave in that example of having a slower running buddy.
Yep.
You're working out different muscles, so it's like a totally different workout for them. So it's like if you're sore after that, it's like maybe you need some of that cross training of doing a different running style or going at a slower pace sometimes, if ultimately your goal would be to have a well-rounded endurance level for whatever type of activity you might be joining with, especially with others at different level types.
And I've the bike, unlike running, is you can always gear down. If my cadence, can't always gear down. If you're on the, you can have the opportunity to gear down. Where if my cadence is, 65 RPM and yours is 50, well, I'll drop down a gear and spin it just to, so we're physically going the same speed down the road, but I might be cranking a lot harder, or I should say a lot faster, not harder. So that helps out quite a bit. And I think I've said this more than once, and I'll say it again, is if I'm riding alone and I have a 30-mile ride planned, it's built into me to go, where am I at now? How am I feeling? And I'll push it to where I want to be when I get done. Like, wow, that was a good ride. Whatever speed that happens to be. If I'm riding with somebody, and this has happened time and time again, same 30-mile ride, right? And I'm like, oh wow, I'm riding, instead of say 15 miles an hour, I'm riding 13 miles an hour. Not a lot of difference on the numbers wise, but I have somebody there, this and that, and when I get done, I may not be physically as close to being like, wow, that was a good ride, but I almost always enjoy it more because I have the company. If I'm riding alone, I almost never stop. Put my head down. I don't, hey, what's that? I don't stop, take a photo. I've ridden by things time and time again where somebody says, oh, that's kind of cool. They'll stop and take a photo. I'm like, how come I didn't see that the last 30 times I rode past this? So the real benefit of riding with a group is you see a lot more because you get their eyes as well. They're looking at things that you wouldn't look at. More ramblings.
Well, to go with this line, do you have any way that you would summarize this? If we want to give a takeaway, maybe an actionable takeaway to listeners, we have all sorts of people that are listening to this podcast, from people that are completely new, wanting to bike pack, to people that don't do it at all, but they're interested, to people that have been doing this quite a long time. We've been getting comments and messages, and it's just cool to, have a few, whether it's local people or people across the country, find this podcast or reach out. We're not necessarily doing this to be the biggest podcast or to, even run ads or make any money or get sponsors. Like, this is a grassroots level, community driven conversation right here. We met through local bike events and a bike group, Michael's Bike Shop and Bicycle Works. But, there's other people around here that are reaching out, trying to make stuff happen, just have fun on bikes and let other people know, hey, if you're into this, come join us. I think that's what I've been liking about this vibe out here. Been finding people like you that are just welcoming and willing to invite pretty much anyone to join and just find fun in, finding your own line and, seeing other people's lines and going, damn, Jerry, So I think having any of that local inspiration, people that you can see in your normal everyday life around you, not just on a screen or, on a YouTube video, but people in your own neighborhood that are capable of doing this stuff and also saying, hey, you want to go with us? So I think that's all been pretty awesome to have around here. And, I hope that wherever any of our listeners are, that they can find that. And if they're ever out here, hit us up, join us. But like I said, any way you would summarize this, what we're calling the line and what a key takeaway might be?
A beginner or somebody with, a lifetime of experience, we all have to recognize the line exists for everybody. It's not the same. So just because they can do it, you may not be able to do it. And vice versa. Just because you can do it means they may not be able to do that. So don't ask your fellow cyclists to attempt something that might be beyond their ability. That could be distance. That could be just pushing the weight or that hill or up or down, whatever it wants to be. So the takeaway is that line exists, respect it. As far as adventure cycling, we should start a program, kind of adventure cycling, like, take a kid fishing program, which take somebody with us. If you're going camping, take somebody with you, show them what it's about. That's what I'm kind of into.
Yeah. I don't think I've told this story either, but that's, I think I've found a love for recreation and doing this kind of stuff from my grandpa, where, I didn't really have anyone else in my family really doing that kind of stuff. And he would go, whether it was skiing or dirt biking or, whatever recreation he found useful in his life to decompress from everything else, he would get out there and take us as kids. And I think it was helpful to see an example of having, that as a part of your life and like making time to get out and do something just for the fun of it. And that's something that stuck with me. That's kind of why I'm enjoying doing this. And again, finding people like you that are out doing that. And sometimes we can take life too seriously and get stuck in current events and the news and all this stuff. And I think the remedy to a lot of that is just getting out, hopefully finding some friends to do it with, right?
You're going to see more at 10 miles an hour than you'll ever see at 55. On top of it, you're going to hear what's going on around you. I think I've talked about it before, as well as I've seen more bears, eagles, elk riding a bike than I have in years of just driving the same darn roads. So if you like to see wildlife, the bike's not a bad way to do it. If you're in bear country, realize that you're going to sneak up on them. You might want to be a little cautious.
I should probably be a little bit more scared of the wildlife around here than when I was in Eugene. We would have cougar sightings and things like that and bear spottings, but you were never worried about the animal actually confronting you. They would always be running away because they're used to seeing people in the city all the time. And, unless you have a small dog or pet with you, you're probably not too worried. But out here, I'm sure you could get in some predicaments if you're not paying attention and you don't want to get cornered by who knows what, even the beautiful elk. If you get too close to those guys or, get cornered, you could be in a bad situation. So, but it is beautiful.
Well, Mike and I rode one time, and we went about a mile along a dirt road in 3 to 4 inches of snow, and we were following a mountain lion track the whole way. And it's like, he's in front of us or she's in front of us. We don't want to catch them. Hopefully, they'll get off the trail and be, maybe it was hours before. I don't know. It wasn't minutes before. I don't think so. It's exciting that, hey, I didn't see them, but boy, I know they were here. I think that's kind of a big thrill out in the wild as well. When you do spot wildlife that you just wouldn't see in the car. So
Yeah. I mean, I've been hoping to get some of those National Geographic type photos out there. So maybe we need to start finding more ways to find all the animals out there.
well, let's see what we could do. We could slather you in peanut butter and
You ever seen that? There's a prank video on YouTube where the guy puts peanut butter all over his body and then goes into the dog park.
oh no.
And all the dogs come up to him and start licking him. And it's just funny because all the dog owners are like, get the hell away from my dog. I don't want my dog licking peanut butter off. Like just the response, the reaction from all the dog owners, they're just like starting to pull their dog away and like
The dogs are like,
they're like,
And then-
party. Yeah. It's a peanut butter party. Man. There should be a peanut butter park around here. I'd go to that one. All about that peanut butter. Well, thanks, Al, for taking the time.
thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And yeah, I'm glad we got to talk that over. I think this was a little bit more of a inspirational, talking over just thoughts, whether random thoughts. But when you're biking, a lot of random thoughts come to mind. I know I have notes on my phone, and I'm sure lots of other people do, where you're just, especially if you're riding by yourself, you just have thoughts come up, and it might even be thinking about the grocery list or things you need to do at home. And then other times it might be just like, holy shit, I had the best idea ever, or deep thoughts, whatever it is, but it's the human experience, right?
Exactly. And people may not realize that how many problems you in your life you can solve on the bike. Because while you're on the bike and pedaling, it can just churn in there. It's churning away. You can't physically do anything about it, but maybe the answer will come because you are away from it at that point. When I used to write code, that's when my answers would come when I was running, because it's like, I'm not in front of the computer. And you were actually thinking the problem through. So that happens a lot.
I've definitely needed that, to step away from the computer and go do something active, to actually have some of those ideas come up, even for work. Like it seems counterintuitive, especially to the whole corporate habits of the past, to actually step away and go do something else. And you might actually be more efficient with your work or have better ideas or be more creative. And the work might actually come out better in the end. And isn't that what any business would want?
So if you have something you're mulling over, get on your bike, ride for an hour or so. You may not get the answer, but there's a good chance that, you haven't stopped thinking about it. And while you're riding, you're kind of free to think about it.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining me, Al. And
Thank you.
I think we need to figure out our next bike ride. It's been a while now. We did that race a bit ago, but we weren't really riding together. And now it's been kind of storming, but I'm hoping we can get back out there soon.
I think we have a mini tour coming up.
Oh, yeah. The micro tour from Bandon to Brookings.
Yep. Looking
3
forward to
days.
that. It's going to be a chill ride, start to finish. Hopefully, we don't catch rain.
I don't think I've even ridden a, actual section of a little bit here and there, but doing like an actual multi-day section of what's considered the Oregon Coast bike route or the Pacific Coast bike route. So be cool just having that experience in this micro chunk. So yeah, I'm excited. Just hoping that the weather looks good by then. So
We're taking
we'll
it
see.
slow, short runs, slow, enjoying it, just taking some side tours just to see what's there.
Oh, we got to hit up all the breweries. I think I'm like, yeah, let's hit up some breweries. Michael's like, let's hit up some Mexican food places. And you're pretty much just like, yeah, let's stop everywhere. I don't mind.
Just stop. Yep. When's the next time we're going to ride by there, right?
Yeah.
So let's stop and see it.
Yeah.
So
Cool. Well, thanks, Al.
see you on the road.
Pedal up that hill. It'll be worth the thrill if you got the power of will to bike and camp and chill. Bike and camp